I want to share with you something completely fascinating. We often talk about what's happening in Israel and the Middle East and the wider world from a current affairs perspective. But sometimes it can be an incredible exercise to look deeper into Torah, biblical texts, because within them we will find incredible insight into understanding what's going on today. But not just insight, but actually prophecy. And that's what I want to share with you today, some incredible insights into Torah prophecy, which map out and help us understand the times in which we are living today. So if you'll bear with me, if you'll indulge me, allow me to share this with you, something that was shown to me by Rabbi Benjamin Blech, who was a brilliant rabbi and educator. So the first important point to understand is that in the Torah, there's a notion that the three forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the three forefathers of the Jewish people, what happens in their lives, the sages tell us, the rabbis tell us in the Talmud, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Levanim. The actions of our forefathers are a sign for the future, are a prototype for the future. And so if you look at their lives and understand their lives, you'll actually see within them the mapping out of how Jewish history and world history is going to unfold. So let's go through their lives and you'll see how remarkable this is. Let's start off with Abraham. Okay, he's the first of the Jewish people's forefathers. He was the first Jew. Now, what happens in Abraham's life? Once Abraham is communicated with by God, he says, I'm choosing you to be the forefather of a people that is going to bring my voice into the world through the Torah. And he says, go to the promised land. And within not a long period of time, once Abraham goes to this land, there's a famine in the land. And so he has to go down with his wife, Sarah, to Egypt. And what happens when he goes to Egypt? Sarah is abducted by Pharaoh, taken captive, and Pharaoh acts oppressively towards them. But then, what happens? Pharaoh is struck by plagues and punishment from God, and he sends out Abraham and Sarah with great wealth, and they leave, and they go back to the land of Israel. Sound familiar? Not many people are so aware of this story of Abraham, but it totally mirrors what happens later on at the beginning of Jewish history, which is the Jewish people as a whole go down to the land of Egypt, Jacob and his sons and daughters and family. And what happens? They're enslaved. They're oppressed by Pharaoh, a new Pharaoh this time. And then eventually God comes along and he afflicts Pharaoh and the Egyptians, and they leave with great wealth. Then we have the story of Isaac. So that's the beginning stage of Jewish history. Again, totally mirrored in Abraham's life. Now, Isaac. Something fascinating about Isaac that you may not know, and he's the second of the Jewish forefathers, is that he never left the land of Israel. He was considered on a particular holy plane, especially in the aftermath of being basically treated as an offering where Abraham was meant to sacrifice him. It didn't happen, but he's seen in some senses as being like an offering to God. And so he stays in the land of Israel. And that, of course, represents the next stage in Jewish history, which is the Jewish people, their golden age in the land of Israel, where they have sovereignty there, where they have a temple, and indeed are able to offer sacrifices in the same way that Isaac himself was. And that represents the second stage of Jewish history, where we establish sovereignty in the land, govern the land, have a Jewish society in the land. And then who comes along next? Abraham, Isaac, and then it's Jacob. But Jacob's name, by the way, changes later to Israel, and we'll talk about that because that's going to really get into the times that we're in today. So Jacob, he has a lifetime of stress. Let's just put it like this, of oppression, of being on the run. Whether it's being on the run from Esau in Hebrew, his brother, who is out to get him because Jacob took the birthright, blessing, and rights. So he's on the run, and then later on he's oppressed by Lavan, his father-in-law. And then he leaves Lavan and has a new confrontation with Esau, with Esav. So understand that Jacob's life, and then afterwards, let's not forget as well, with the story of Joseph, it's another story of stress and pain and anguish for him. Jacob is someone who experiences oppression, torment, and he's on the run for a lot of his life. Now, of course, this clearly represents the next stage in Jewish history, which is exile. The wandering Jew, the Jew moving around from place to place, never being able to settle in peace. The exiled Jew, the Jew that is on the run. And it's, Jacob even says himself when he greets Pharaoh later in the story of Joseph, he says, when Pharaoh asks about his life, he says his life has been a life of deep pain and challenge. So something interesting happens, however, though. And this is where it gets really interesting in terms of today. So towards the end of Jacob's life and running away from Esau, his brother, who, by the way, Esau, our sages suggest, represents the West, the Christian world, the world of Rome, the Roman Empire and Western civilization that sprung from that, which of course is the exile that the Jewish people were put into 2,000 years ago when the land was conquered by the Romans, and we're still seen in some senses to be in that exile to this day. But something happens in the story of Jacob where towards the end of his life, he has an encounter with Esau. Now, Jacob, his name means heel, because he clung onto the heel of Esau as he came out of the womb. Let's not forget they were twins. And the rabbi suggests that part of the meaning of his name, heel, is that everything he did was in a roundabout way. He's constantly moving on the run, having to get out of tricky situations, try to prevent people like Esau from getting the blessing, which would have been a disaster. So he had to go around him and find ways to get there. But he's constantly kind of reacting to situations, trying to avoid getting himself into more trouble, constantly on the run. But then he has this encounter with an angel, which the rabbis tell us is the representative of Esau. And he is struck in an area near his thigh. The specific area is his sinew. And he's struck there, and then afterwards he is seen to be in some way victorious over this representative of Esau, this angelic representative of Esau. And he says to this representative of Esau, he says, before you leave, please bless me. It's a very weird, cryptic discussion and encounter. But nonetheless, that's what he says. In fact, let me get it up. He says, I will not go except if you bless me. And the representative of Esau says to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. Israel is now your name. Why? For you have striven with God and with man and have prevailed. So that's what the name Israel actually means, to strive with man and God and to prevail. So this time, Jacob takes on a new approach, which is not to act in a heel and roundabout way to go around issues in life, but this time to actually deal with them head on, to go into the fight. Sometimes life and situations cannot be about flight, but they're actually going to be about fight. And this time he actually fights and confronts with Esau this time. And because of his victory in that battle, he gets the name Israel. Now, isn't it interesting? What happens in this fight is his sinew is damaged and hurt. And this is the area that represents the reproductive part of the body. And if we look at Jewish history and Jacob's life, where he's constantly on the run, culminating in a moment where he has a big confrontation and an area connected to his reproductive organs is deeply injured. And then his name changes to Israel. Could this in some way be a reference, I wonder, to a moment in which the seed of Jacob was deeply injured in our long, long exile, and then, just afterwards, our name changed to Israel? Could this perhaps, in some ways, be representing the moment in which the representatives of Esau tried to strike a fatal blow to the Jewish people, the Holocaust? And then, shortly afterwards, what happens? The Jewish people come to the world, they come to the representatives of Esau, and they say, we are going to fight this time. No more of us just going around, no more of us flight, no more of us being a wandering Jew. This time, we're actually going to fight back and prevail. And Esau blesses him with the name Israel. How remarkable that just after the worst blow the Jewish people faced as a nation, just after that, we change our name, we re-establish ourselves as Israel. And now we're a people that fight, re-establish our sovereignty. And the nations blessed us with that name, voting for Israel's re-establishment. Absolutely remarkable. I think it's hard to ignore these parallels. And more than that, it's remarkable when you think about how Jewish history has unfolded and how it mirrors. But I want to show you one final thing, which I think is this is something else that Rabbi Benjamin Blech pointed out, and it's just absolutely incredible. So there's a notion that each verse in the Torah can connect to the year that it corresponds to. So verse 1 corresponds to the first year of the creation, verse 2 corresponds to year 2, etc., etc. Now, if that's the case, the Hebrew year in which Israel was re-established was 1948. Sorry, that's the non-Hebrew year, that's the Gregorian calendar. But 1948 will correspond to the year 5708 in the Hebrew calendar. And do you want to see what the 5708th verse is in the Torah? It's this. Then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you, and he will gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. It's just unbelievable. I'm telling you, the more you study Torah, the more you study the works of our sages, the more you can find incredible insights into understanding Jewish history, the world, and also, I think, gaining some confidence that actually, in the end, the Jewish people will prevail. And more than that, we will reconcile with the world. Because, don't forget, in this encounter between Jacob and Esau, after this moment of confrontation, the next thing that happens is Jacob and Esau come together and they embrace with one another. Ishmael too returns, he repents. So that means that if we really are seeing a prototype for Jewish history and what happened in our forefather stories, then it will also follow that world peace and reconciliation is going to follow too. Remarkable stuff. Thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.